Oh, good morning. Welcome in. Steve Robertson, genespage.com, 247 Sports. He joins us on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line, brought to you by Older Brother Bistro, sister restaurant to Two Brothers, and also Luva Wine Bar, which is right down the street. Unbelievable, beautiful upscale wine bar with amazing food, all in Starkville. Older Brother Bistro in the Cotton District, Luva Wine Bar in the Cotton District too. We welcome in Steve Robertson on the Out of Bounds Show. All right, Steve, it was a crazy day. Some signing days are, some are not. Well, I think they're all crazy for you and your team, but Gene's page was all over everything. But let's get straight into Tyler Lockhart, the number one linebacker in the state of Mississippi. He had been committed to MSU for a long time. Ole Miss makes a run. And then you take it away as far as what all happened yesterday and how he ended up as a Hail State signee.
Well, it's an interesting deal. It's Ole Miss had him, come in, watch the Egg Bowl, take a visit at the last minute. This is a guy that we've actually been expecting to sign with Mississippi State for 2 years. Ever since his brother, signed with State, TJ, and he committed kind of out of the blue to Auburn. And a lot of people are like, oh, I can't believe this. And I said, guys, just let it play out. Okay, this is a young guy. It's very impressionable. Just let it play out. Well, of course, he backs off of that commitment, commits to Mississippi State. He had been committed to Mississippi State long before he actually made the announcement. And then Ole Miss comes in late and kind of muddies the water. And that's what good recruiters do. And sometimes people forget that aspect of it. Everybody wants the same thing, right? Everybody out there is working hard to get the same thing. And so when, there was some projections, some people, and I think a lot of that comes from one source, which is never a way to do business. But all that understood, we'll save that conversation for another day. What we heard basically all morning is that the family was adamant that he was not going to go to Ole Miss. And it's nothing against Ole Miss. I think it's important to kind of understand that. There's not this anti-Ole Miss sentiment within the group. It's just that Tyler's a bit of an impressionable young man. And, the family reportedly just felt that he would do better, with his brother, TJ Lockhart, and his best friend, Fat Clark. The three of them were like brothers, and just felt like that it would be easier for him to transition from home to acclimating to life in the Southeastern Conference. And so even up until, we'll get done with the Levy press conference yesterday. And at that point, Jeff even says, maybe we can get two more. They were waiting on, LaQuavian Jackson and Tyler Lockhart. So I walk outside and, get word that, hey, Tyler Lockhart's mom and uncle are on the way to the school to sit and talk with him, and they're going to get this thing worked out. Next thing you know, he's streaming out there that he's going to Ole Miss. And then it took forever, for Ole Miss to announce him as a signee. And so I'm in the car heading home, and I got people asking me, has he been officially announced as a signee? Because, obviously with a big recruiting win like that, you want that out there as quickly as possible. And we've gone through some scenarios a little bit like this one before where there's something that's wrong, right? There's something, you maybe get some paperwork issue, whatever. So probably every hour for a long time, I kept getting, he's still not listed as a signee. He's not a signee. And then the tweet comes out from Ole Miss, and I said, well, okay, well, that's it. I mean, they wouldn't have put that out there without, everything being as it should. And turns out that it wasn't. And so we get word, I guess it's about 7:40 last night, that this thing wasn't over. And to be honest with you, Bo, when I begin to get those calls, I'm thinking, yeah, okay, sure. Yeah. We'll see how that plays out. The next phone call I get is they want to sign with Mississippi State, and that she had not facilitated the paperwork to close out his recruitment with Ole Miss. And that, he's 17, so you have to have the custodial parent sign with the student athlete, and that she absolutely wasn't going to sign with Ole Miss. And so then they both signed with Mississippi State. And then I get a call that says, hey, State's about to announce officially that Tyler Lockhart is a Mississippi State signee. And basically what happened is, everything has to be e-signed these days. And it kind of goes back to that Floyd Ravens scenario that played out with Ole Miss. And it's like, I want people to understand, I'm not taking shots at Ole Miss here, but there were some safeguards put in place. And if you remember that situation back in 2011, where Floyd Raven was announced as a signee by Ole Miss and Texas A&M, there were later allegations that the mom forged his signature on the letter of intent for Ole Miss. Well, Houston Nutt was there. They get the whole thing worked out. Ole Miss releases him as a signee. The kid goes to A&M. Everything's fine. But there were some safeguards put in place to prevent something like that from ever happening again. And that's where the e-sign documents became, a big thing to give everybody some protection. And so Mississippi State has the actual e-sign documents from Tyler Lockhart and his mother, and Ole Miss does not. So as a result, he is now officially a Mississippi State signee.
All right, Ole Miss fans are texting me saying, sad, didn't allow him to go where he wanted to go. Your reaction to that, Steve Robertson?
Well, God rest his soul, but didn't we have a similar situation play out with MJ Daniels when the shoe was on the other foot? And there's a reason that we have parents sign for kids that are under the age of 18, and it's because of the fact that, sometimes kids can be easily manipulated. And, Bo, I don't know how your family was, but I remember the very first time that I mentioned to my dad that, I may go visit Ole Miss. And he goes, well, you're welcome to go. My money won't be going with you, And so that seems kind of jokey, but the reality of it is that, it is what it is, and if he goes to Mississippi State and he's unhappy this year, he'll be 18 next year and he can get in transfer portal and go wherever he likes. But, I think it's important too that the most important thing here is the young man and his family. It's not the rivalry. And I know we've had a good time with all that in the last several hours, everybody kind of goading back and forth, like, all these people in my Twitter mentions when he announces for Ole Miss, and so then, when the situation's reversed, I mean, it's just good rivalry talk. But at the end of the day, this is about a young man and his family. And, if he didn't want to be here, he wouldn't be here. But, there have been several instances in the past where, a parent has kind of stepped up and says, no, this is what we're going to do. I mean, how many times do you hear about every kid when they're juniors and we interview them? I'll go anywhere in the country. For the right opportunity. And then on signing day, what do they all say? Well, I wanted to be closer to home and close to my family, and there have been situations in the past where, I could name probably 100 of them where a guy comes out and commits to some school, far away from home, but in the end, the family kind of comes in and says, hey, this is what's best for everybody involved. And, I think too, the thing with Tyler and TJ, I mean, if they're at opposite schools, where does mama go on game day? You kind of put her in a difficult situation too. And so, but at the end of the day, it was a family decision, and the custodial parent may have been the person that made that decision. I don't know all of those details around it, but the reality of it is this a guy's been committed to Mississippi State for a long time, and now he's signed with Mississippi State.
And we'll leave it there. Steve Robertson. All right, Steve, I've got 20 seconds. We've still got the bet on Coleman Hutzler. Is Hutzler back for another year, or do they make a change in the next week?
I think he's back for another year.
I cannot believe they're going to walk this thing back. All right, thanks, Steve Robertson. Appreciate it. GenesPage.com, 247 Sports. Steve joined us on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. I think that is a terrible decision by the football program and the athletic department. And I don't know if they're tone deaf or what. But Steve Palazzolo coming up next. NFL Podcast of the Year. Let's talk some NFL football. right, I'll give you a couple of amazing spots to enjoy NFL game day. Pearl River Resort, obviously inside the Golden Moon Casino, the Timeout Lounge, Sportsbook and Lounge. Great place. They've got wings, burn-in quesadillas, which are wonderful, nachos and the like at Pearl River Resort. Game day this weekend. Also, around here, enjoy a Golden Road Mango Cart Wheat Ale beer at Martin's in Livingston. They've got TVs everywhere. Brand new restaurant. I mean, Martin's has been downtown since the 50s, but this one is brand new out in Livingston. They renovated the restaurant and bar. TVs everywhere. Great place for game day. And they've got Mango Cart on tap. It's Golden Road Mango Cart Wheat Ale, and it's absolutely delicious. Pair it with some wings or a burger or a redfish sandwich or a fried oyster po' boy at Martin's in Livingston. We want to welcome in Steve Palazzolo. Check the Mic Show, NFL Podcast of the Year. Last year, he's our NFL insider, and he joins us on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. How you doing, man?
Just getting hungry again. Every time I'm on the show, you're telling me about all this great food I can't have right now.
Dude, we have such great. I mean, the Sun Belt in the South, the culinary boom the last 25 years has just been insane. You would love it if you could get down here.
I'm coming to the Super Bowl this year. I'll be down for the whole week. So you guys going to be down there?
Yes, I'm going for either Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday night or Wednesday and Thursday night. I'm very excited about it. We'll Perfect. Have to, dude, I will put you on some gumbo. I'm going to the Saints game next week, but I'll put you on some gumbo or some po' boys. I'll give you a list of places Perfect. To hit. You will. Have you been to New Orleans before?
I'm ready. Yeah, I went briefly after a Senior Bowl trip a couple of years ago. A couple times. Been there a couple times. Went to a Saints game on Monday Night Football.
Okay.
About 8 years ago.
Okay.
So yeah, been in and out a few times.
Oh my gosh, I'm going to have you a list for whatever that is.
I'm ready.
First or second week in February. Okay. Where do I want to go here first? Let's go NFL QBs. All right. Who we're always asking you about. I mean, asking you about Mahomes is whatever, but we're always asking about Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, this guy, Kyler Murray, whatever. Over the last 4 weeks, who is a guy that has like elevated, and it may be a guy that's played well many years before, but over the last 4 weeks, who is an NFL QB that has elevated their play big time?
Well, I think Josh Allen's getting all the hype right now for what we saw in Sunday Night Football. He's kind of in that boat. I think he's played well. If you go a little bit beyond 4 weeks, it's Justin Herbert. I mean, Herbert's played extremely well. I think, he had some ups and downs in that Sunday night game against Cincinnati a few weeks ago. And, a lot of his best throws are falling incomplete, so it's not always showing up in the stats. And I think the Chargers are just low on quality playmakers. Second rounder Ladd McConkey looks legit. He's been awesome. He had something like 80% of their receiving yards last week, but Herbert's played really good football, and that'll be a great test, this week going up against Kansas City and, seeing if the Chargers can get over the hump. And, as a team that should be competitive in the West against the Chiefs, if, just show that they can win one against the defending champs. But I think Herbert's played great.
Yeah, that's my favorite team out West. I grew up a San Diego Chargers fan, and I know they moved to L.A., but have always loved the colors. And that blue is awesome. And I know they mix it up but Herbert and Harbaugh, how would you describe what Harbaugh wants to do I know he's a ground and pound guy, but it also looks like at times he's willing to let Herbert cook, if you will. How would you describe, I know it's still early, but what you think they want to do with Justin Herbert and Jim Harbaugh?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I think a lot of the NFL coaching hires this year, or just generally, I think Dan Campbell's changed a lot of NFL coaching hires because of the culture that he's added. And I think Jim Harbaugh was similar. You know, you're not a lot of the coaching candidates. It's like, oh, this guy works with Kyle Shanahan, and this guy is a great defensive mind and has a great system, and that's usually the top candidates. But then you have a guy like Dan Campbell who didn't have a system, and he has been outstanding. He's brought culture, culture change to Detroit. I feel like that's what Harbaugh brings to the table more than anything. There's nothing that's about a Harbaugh scheme, so to speak, other than they're going to use a lot of tight ends and a fullback. And they're going to try to get big to run the ball, but get big to also run play action, right? Like tighten it up with tight ends, fullback, run play action, create explosive plays. But it's not offensive masterminds, Jim Harbaugh type. It's really just instilling the CEO type stuff that a head coach has to do that I think Jim Harbaugh's special at. So I think offensively, they absolutely want to run the ball, but I think they've also shown that in the right games, in the right situations, in a game like this against Kansas City, they can be aggressive. They could take their shots. They could try to create explosive plays because Kansas City's offense isn't what it was, but they could play any type of game. If they have to play in a shootout, they'll chuck it around down the field with Mahomes, throwing to DeAndre Hopkins and Xavier Worthy. So I think Harbaugh's shown that he wants to run the ball, wants to be physical. I think he's already instilled that in the Chargers, but also knows when they have to take some shots in the pass game with Herbert.
I know it's early with him back in the NFL, Steve Palazzolo, but do you think if you were doing rankings of NFL head coaches, would Harbaugh be in your top 10?
Oh, yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, there's the previous track record. There's what he did at Michigan. And look, the Chargers should be in transition. I think that's what's most impressive. Honestly, a team like the Broncos, too, should be in transition. And so I think when you're winning, when you should be rebuilding, that's probably a good sign. Now, I said that about the Giants 2 years ago as well. They were winning a bunch of games when they were supposed to be rebuilding and then made mistakes after that. But either way, the Chargers gutted their receiver core this offseason, said, okay, let's get back to this ground and pound. But Harbaugh's taken this annual underachieving team with the Chargers and made them better. So I think that's a great start. And then they have a sharp front office, brought a bunch of people over from Baltimore, and I think they will make good team building decisions in the coming years. And I think that's what makes the Chargers dangerous, is that combination of what should be a sharp front office combined with Harbaugh. And, once they get his pieces in place, I think they should be really good over these next few years.
All right, Sean Payton continues to win with the Broncos. Where are you with the I know the AFC's got some really good teams at the top, and you just mentioned a couple with the Chiefs and the Bills. But they're trending the right way. And Vance Joseph, the defensive coordinator, is doing a great job, and they're figuring it out on offense. Now that we're getting into December, how do you feel about the Denver Broncos?
I mean, way better than I did coming into the season. I thought you have this massive dead cap hit with Russell Wilson out, and you've got Bo Nix, QB6 off the board. Who knows what you're going to get from a Bo Nix, other than the fact that he had 60-plus games, 60 starts in college. So, you have that experience. So there was a chance that Bo Nix was going to come in and hit the ground running better than anyone, just with all that experience. That has been a huge factor, I think, these last few years with success for quarterbacks is just experience. Jaden Daniels, Brock Purdy, we're talking multi-year starters, a lot of these guys. So I've just been so impressed. And over these last few weeks, I've said on the podcast a bunch, this feels like the first time I'm seeing Sean Payton, the offensive mastermind, at work. I mean, since he's been in Denver, I don't think we saw it much last year. Whatever the disconnect was between him and Russell Wilson, obviously Wilson has found his success in a different system with a different coach, and that's fine. But this is the first time I see Sean Payton moving personnel around, leaning into the right personnel. Marvin Mims, who's an explosive playmaker, moving him around and creating. They've got some young receivers to work with. I mean, I've been so impressed with the overall, honestly, front office and coaching job by Denver, because on paper, it doesn't look like a great roster. But Vance Joseph has done wonders with that defense. They were a little off on Monday night with with some injuries, but until they made plays at the end. But Vance Joseph has worked wonders with that defense, created pressure and havoc with a plethora of players. Offensively, they've got a good offensive line. They haven't had a great run game, but they've figured out how to, develop Bo Nix, get him comfortable, play to his strengths, and move playmakers around. So I've been so impressed. To me, it's like night and day with what last year was with Sean Payton, with Russell Wilson. They had success at times last year, but it was a lot of turnover, fluky type stuff. I think Vance did a good job with the defense last year too, but they were streaky last year. It's been much more consistent, I think, this year in Denver.
Steve Palazzolo, NFL Podcast of the Year. His show, Check the Mic. He joins us on the Farm Bureau Insurance Guest Line. And this segment is brought to you by Stella Artois and Wings at Martin's in Livingston. Great place to watch the games on game day. Okay, where are you now with the Washington Commanders? Have they hit a wall? The NFC East, the Eagles are, and I guess I need to also ask you, are you now sold on the Eagles after what they did the last 4 or 5 weeks last year of the season? Handicap the NFC East with the Eagles and the Commanders with me. For me.
Yeah, starting with the Commanders, I think Washington showed over the last month that maybe they're not ready to compete at the highest level of the NFL, lose to Pittsburgh, lose to Philadelphia. And that's okay. Much like I was talking about with the Chargers, Washington was supposed to be rebuilding and figuring out what they have in their quarterback. And I think it's, no matter what ends up happening, I think it's a positive season for Washington. So they're competitive. Maybe they sneak in as the wild card, but I don't think they're ready to compete with the best teams in the NFC. But it's been an impressive year one for Dan Quinn. Defense has looked better in recent weeks. Jaden Daniels has looked good. Him and Cliff Kingsbury, I think, has evolved his offense a little bit, which was a huge question mark with his return to the NFL. So I think it's all positive, but they're a tick below the best. And I think with Philadelphia, we've talked about them a lot on the show and how much I respect Howie Roseman and their front office and everything that they've done. And that made last year's collapse, I think, one of the biggest, crazy stories I've seen in the NFL over the last few years. They had a disconnect between the coaches, offensive, defensive coordinators seemed like awful fits. They were changing defensive coordinators right around this time of year. They had busted coverages in the secondary like crazy. Nobody played up to their capabilities. They looked old, but they still had a lot of talent, right? But they still had a ton of talent on the team. And this year, they get this infusion of youth. I thought they did a great job in the draft, just waiting. In the draft, all these offensive players are going off the board. They get cornerback 1 in Quinyon Mitchell out of Toledo. They get Cooper DeJean, who's become a great slot player for them, slot defender, in the second round. So 2 corners. They get the youth at the right positions. And then you add a Saquon Barkley. And my whole thing with Barkley is, watch out for the discourse this offseason, which is like, oh, all you have to do is add a running back and you're going to improve your team. It's not really true just because Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs have gone. Like, they all went to good situations. But when you look at Saquon, he's always been a guy that doesn't create yards on his own very well. So if you're in a situation like he was with the Giants where you don't have great run blocking, he doesn't create yards. But if you give him just a little crease, you just give him a little bit, he could take it to the house. That was my instant analysis when they signed him, back during free agency. And that's been it. The Eagles, they run block well. They've got an excellent offensive line. But they also have a running quarterback in Jalen Hurts. That gives Saquon Barkley space.
That's true.
And now he can create those big plays.
Yeah.
So the Eagles are legit. They're good. They're good everywhere, well run, and they got the coaching staff in order after last year's collapse.
And a top 5 general manager, right?
Oh yeah, it's the whole thing, right?
They're aligned. Where like the
in the front office.
Yeah. So the Eagles are aligned. We talked about this. The Ravens are aligned. The Chiefs, the Bills, the Lions, some other teams. The Cowboys are not aligned. There's other franchise. Like name a few other than the Cowboys where there's not the alignment from ownership, general manager, head coach. Obviously, the Cowboys.
We've seen what's happened with the. I want to put my resume in for the Jets job, so I can't, disparage them. But we've seen the disconnect between what's going on with the Jets right now. We saw Hard Knocks last year with the Giants. I don't think that's necessarily toxic or anything, but you see the discussions behind the scenes. They wanted to keep Saquon. Ownership wants to do one thing. General manager wants to do something else. But I think that's more natural. But the Jets are the other example of, clearly there was some disconnect there.
All right, let's talk Aaron Rodgers. Where are we with his career? What they're doing? Has he hijacked the franchise? Is he playing better than we think from what y'all see? What do you think? Where is this going, and what do you think is the future? And is he done? How do you assess Aaron Rodgers now and going forward, Steve Palazzolo?
Man, I think it's a nuanced conversation because a lot of times on the shouty shows, right? Of course, the shouty shows will just shout out, Aaron Rodgers is cooked. And most of the times you say a guy's cooked, it's because we saw Drew Brees lose some arm strength at the end, and he just didn't look physically right at the end. We saw Peyton Manning not look physically right at the end. Most of the time, that's the warning sign. Physically, something changes, and it's like, all right, this guy's just not what he was, and that's okay. He's in his 40s. I don't think there's a massive physical decline with Aaron Rodgers. There's enough. There's a little bit. He's coming off an Achilles. Doesn't move very well. But it's not this like, oh, he can't throw the ball. But I think it's everything else. And I think there's a little hindsight analysis to do here as well. When you talk about, I'm a big Tom Brady fan. I've been impressed with what Brady's did in his entire career. The fact that Brady went to a new system, brought his part of the system, but also adjusted, and he was coached. Like Brady, when you go back, you ask Tom, what have you done your whole career? Bill Belichick coached him. Bruce Arians coached him, right? Brady, being the best quarterback of all time, isn't like going in and saying, I'm running the show now and doing everything your way. It's actually being coached well and then adding your own twist on things to make it better. And I feel like Brady did that really well. And so now I don't blame Aaron Rodgers physically. I start to blame him for all the other stuff. It's like, okay, why did even the defense regress? Why do they have special teams mishaps? Is that because the quarterback they brought in became bigger than the coach, became bigger than the whole organization? He brought in all of his own people. He brought in his own offense. And that's the other big thing. If we go back and look at Rodgers' career arc, starting back in 2017, his offense with Mike McCarthy became stale. Everybody blames Mike McCarthy. But Rodgers, and Mike McCarthy's out, Matt LaFleur comes in, and once Aaron Rodgers bought in to Matt LaFleur's offense, he won 2 MVPs. And Matt LaFleur was dialing it up in the red zone, giving him easy touchdowns. So he had 38 touchdowns and 44 touchdowns. I'm just telling you, that was what was happening for a couple of years. Matt LaFleur was on his game, and Aaron Rodgers bought into it. And then since then, now LaFleur's out, Rodgers is like, all right, I'm going to bring my old offense back from 2017. So now their offense only works if Aaron Rodgers makes a 20-yard pinpoint throw down the field into tight coverage, and Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams just ball out. It's just there's no scheme, there's no scheming up easy plays. There's just nothing looks easy with the Jets, and I do believe Rodgers deserves this overarching blame to it. So what's the future? I think if Rodgers wants to go somewhere and he falls in line under a coach, like if he goes, like, I don't know, if he went to San Francisco and San Francisco says, oh, we're not going to sign Purdy, we're going to do 1 year of Aaron Rodgers, and he goes and he plays under Kyle Shanahan, I bet he could have a good year. I don't think he's physically done.
I see.
But if Rodgers goes in and it's like, I need my players, I need my stuff, I need Nat Hackett as my coach, like if that's how they play it, that's a disaster. But I think he's still physically okay to play football, if that all makes sense.
Okay. So when he pulls a LeBron, it doesn't work. But
yes, there you go.
Okay.
You summed it up better.
Yeah. Okay.
He can't be LeBron. He can't be. He's got to be a part of a system.
Sure. Which Brady, like you said, I mean, to piggyback off what you said, Brady was able to balance Belichick with also what they wanted to do schematically and their model, but also what you're saying is incorporate his wrinkles into the offense. Is that right?
Yeah, and you saw that in Tampa Bay, like Brady went in and ran Bruce Arians' offense at the beginning of 2020. And then as the season progressed and when they went into 2021, It was like, all right, here's a few more concepts that Brady's comfortable with. And it became a really nice marriage of two systems. It was an aggressive downfield system with Brady making quick decisions and making it work. It was a great marriage. And so Peyton Manning was able to bring his system kind of to Denver. But even his last season, he was kind of playing under Gary Kubiak, who had a completely different system than Peyton had ever run. And Peyton didn't have a great year, but the defense did, and they went and won the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times we evaluate quarterbacks. It's like, well, this guy's never had a good defense. This guy's never had good special teams. I wonder how much the quarterback has to do with that. How much is that? Like, why did the defense get so much worse with the Jets all of a sudden with Rodgers? Is it because he has too much power top to bottom across the organization? I think there's probably something to that, and a reason why Brady and Manning, consistently won, and maybe Rodgers has fallen off here.
All right, I've only got a minute here. Steve Palazzolo, his show is Check the Mic, great NFL show. That's some awesome game tonight. All right. All right. Hey, is your Christmas tree up? Or your holiday ornaments? Yeah.
Black Friday, we had it up, all ready to go.
Okay.
Leaning a little bit, but we think it's going to hold up. We're good to go.
Is one of the kids going to take it out? I know you've got some rambunctious boys like in that age. I had that too.
Almost certainly. They're always wrestling on the couch right next to it. It's probably coming down at some point.
I love it.
But so far, so good.
WWE at the Palazzolo home. All right, buddy. Have a good weekend. See you, dude.
All right. Yep. Thank you.
Speaking of game day and watching, let's go with mssmarthomes.com, Jackson, and Jake Manning. If you want the ultimate TV game day movie music experience in your TV room, living room, game room, and I have it. You want to get the Sonos surround system, and of course, you can control it from your phone. That's why it's mssmarthomes.com. Call Jake Manning today, mssmarthomes.com. And the Sonos system for your house is powered by Mississippi Smart Homes and mssmarthomes.com.
Say, kids, what time is it?
It's 9 a.m., and this ain't okay show. It's the Out of Bounds Show with Bo Bounds.
On aboard!
As Mississippi's #1 morning show rolls on the Zone 105.9 and online at thezone1059.com.
Oh, good morning. Welcome in to the Out of Bounds Show, brought to you by mssmarthomes.com. It is great. The Sonos surround system that Jake Manning and MS Smart Homes, or Mississippi Smart Homes, MS Smart Homes can do for your house is great. I'm talking movies, music, games. All of us in the house love it. Now, I've got it in my man room, and we've got it out in our family, TV watching room. Sonos surround system. I mean, it's so, whether you're playing Spotify loud, an unbelievable movie, or games, from March Madness to the Masters to football to Ole Miss and Mississippi State hoops, the Sonos surround system, brought to you by Jake Manning and mssmarthomes.com. Call them today. They'll come out and give you a free quote. Boom. mssmarthomes.com.
What better time?
And you've still got time to get it for the NFL playoffs and the Super Bowl, which then leads you to March Madness. So if you get on the schedule, if you go to mssmarthomes.com right now, you get on the schedule, you can catch the NFL playoffs, all of Ole Miss, Mississippi State basketball, and SEC basketball, which is loaded this year. Y'all know that. Loaded. After the SEC ACC Challenge. The Super Bowl and March Madness, which leads you to the Masters. You'll have the Sonos surround system, brought to you by mssmarthomes.com. You can control it from your phone. It's amazing. I watched the Mississippi State Pitt game last night with it. The snow game the other night on the tube, NFL.
Josh Allen.
Yeah, Josh Allen. Unbelievable.
Superman.
Hey, over the weekend, was college football unbelievable this past weekend?
Year.
When you look at the games, like the way that Michigan and Ohio State unfolded, and Georgia Tech, and just compelling games, crazy plays, college football was wild this year. And I guess it's just going to continue to be going forward. This is ESPN 105.9 The Zone. We are the Out of Bounds Show. I think it will be going forward.
Yeah, this is the new normal, right?
Because, as you spread, as the talent gets spread out.
Right.
Now, do I believe that the Georgia, Bama, LSU, Ohio States will also figure some things out? Yes, I do.
Right.
Over the next two cycles. But I don't think that they'll ever have the depth that they've had again. Like Nick Saban enjoyed, he came along right at where we had another reboot, paradigm shift, another modern era. He was so smart. He embraced it, did all the pivoting and doing all the things that he needed to do. And he was able to build depth and have his second teamers were just awesome.
Yeah, I mean, they were awesome. And he
kind of captured that for about a 12-year run, maybe a little bit more, but about a 12-year run at Alabama where Saban they were stacked. Their second 22 was stacked.
Right.
And sometimes a little more, but that, man. their backups weren't really backups.
No. They would have started anywhere. I mean, almost anywhere else.
Almost anywhere else for the most part. And, of course, he was able to stack the line of scrimmage.
Right.
so that when hips, knees, and ankles give, which they're going to in a sport that is driven by physicality and violence, he was able to roll another dude out. Now, I'm not saying that that guy was always as good as the guy that went down, but he was really good. And Kirby called it for about 4 or 5 years. And give Kirby credit too. And they just stacked the line of scrimmage with beasts. And Ohio State did it under, Tressel, but that was almost another era, but definitely under Urban. Yeah. And Ron Day did it for a couple years, and now they're not going to be able to do it. LSU, even as much as Miles and Eddie O were average coach on a scale of 1 to 10, a 5, 5.5, they were able to recruit and stack line of scrimmage guys to the point where they played for 3 national titles and won 2 between those 2 coaches. I mean, they'd go 4 and they couldn't take less and win like Dan Mullen or Hugh Freeze or all the other guys that we talk about. Leach, Snyder, Campbell at Iowa State, Gundy, Beamer, and so on. Couldn't do it. Brett Bielema can do that. Bert. I mean, wherever Bert goes, he wins.
That's a fact.
He won at Wisconsin. He won at Arkansas. He's winning at Illinois. He can take less and get the most out of those players. I mean, he can just flat out coach. Of course, he's a former offensive lineman. We talk about that. Brent Key, Georgia Tech. I mean, a lot. I think the most juice you get out of former players is former offensive linemen. It's so technical, so fundamental, so developmental that is why so many former offensive linemen become really damn good football coaches, Jackson.
Yeah, I mean,
Brett Bielema, Brent Key, and we could go on and on. And that happens in the NFL too.
Right.
And kudos to guys like that. I know we're never going to celebrate Illinois and Georgia Tech like we should. But, dude, when you can win 7 games, 8 games, 9 games at places that don't get the star-studded players that Georgia, Bama, and LSU and Ohio State get, damn. Also, a lot of you have had fun. Let me switch gears here. We are the Out of Bounds Show. The Mac Hike Auto Group text line is 601-885-3776. We're on Twitter X at Bo Bounds. People are very active on there. Ole Miss fans chirping about Tyler Lockhart, who signed with Mississippi State. I've got Southern Miss fans upset with me for the fact that I am right, and Mississippi State doesn't need to go down to Hattiesburg and play Labor Day weekend. And if Southern Miss is smart, they'll go, you're right. Pay us to get out of the game so that we can go buy a team and finish in the top 3 in the Sun Belt. This isn't a shot at Southern Miss. I grew up, Reggie Collier was my favorite player. And I loved Bond. Like John Bond and Reggie Collier are 2 of the most talented players to ever play in the state. Rock stars. And if they'd played in modern era offenses, watch out. 6'4", 220, and could fly. If they had the QB coaching that you have today from Freeze and Mullen and Lane and Heupel and guys like that, even Leach, get out of Gundy, get out of their way. Spurrier, big Spurrier. Y'all know when I reference Spurrier.
Yeah.
Big Spurrier. Reggie Collier, Randolph Keys, Casey Fisher. I just found a way for you to make another $500,000 in your NIL so that you can go to a really cool bowl game and finish in the top 3 in the Sun Belt. That's more important than hosting Mississippi State Labor Day weekend. Twitter X at Bo Bounds. Stella Artois caller line 601-707-3750. All right. I got a text from Gator Matt. You better get on the Florida Gator hype train, baby. I'm on it. I started talking about Lagway, and I never sold the Billy Napier stock. It just took him a minute to get rolling. He continued to tweak and make some changes, and he brought in Ron Roberts, which was smart. It's what Jeff Lebby and Mississippi State need to do. Billy Napier, who has a lot more head coaching experience than Jeff Lebby, looked at it and said, I need to get a veteran defensive coordinator. Y'all know about Ron Roberts. He went to Delta State and won big. He went to Southeast Louisiana and won big. He's a very underrated coach. And, and then he was at Auburn, other places. And he was the calming, grizzled veteran presence that Billy Napier needed when their backs were against the wall and things didn't look good when they lost to Miami and lost some other games this year, and then lost both of their quarterbacks. Graham Mertz out for the season. DJ Lagway, he got carted off the field. I thought he was done. And they got better in the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball, offensive line and defensive line. Lagway was able to come back on one leg, but they had two running backs who were very, very physical. And they were working that tight end too. And of course, their defense, 88, 94, were monsters along with some other guys. I mean, they got talent. Their top 15 recruiter, they just finished 11th. They kind of live in that top 12, but they'll drop don't be surprised if they win a little bit more. Billy drops a 3 or a 4 or a 5. But Florida's a national brand. They're a monster, and we all know where they're located and what they've done when they get right. I'm not surprised that Sunbelt Billy looks to be turning this thing. But he hired a grizzled veteran defensive coordinator in Ron Roberts and said, hey, I can't do everything. You need to make this side of the ball better or we're all getting fired. Yeah. And Ron Roberts, you know what he can do? He can flat out coach, and not everybody can. There's a lot of really good coaches out there, high school, college, NFL. And then there's just a lot of mediocre, right? That's just the way it is in every industry. And Ron Roberts can coach. He can coach. And that Florida D, you could just see it week after week getting better. And look what they did to the Ole Miss offense. That's a talent. Even without the running, I'll never understand as good as Lane is, as unbelievable as Lane Kiffin has been. I will never understand what Lane was and the program were doing as far as running the football this year. When you have you left it all on Jackson Dart, and so you didn't run the football well, and it was all on Dart. And Trey Harris got hurt. And you had some other pieces, and I liked them, but they weren't dominant. I mean, those guys were far from dominant guys. Lane could scheme them open,
Sure,
but not every Florida. Florida was down their best secondary player, and Kentucky was down their best secondary player. But yeah, Florida doesn't. I'm not surprised.
that's a credit to Napier, though.
It's absolutely a credit for Napier to understand.
Yeah,
I have to make a change.
I'm good, Bo Bow.
Who do you think made him? Who do you think put that idea in his head? And does that same idea need to be driven into other heads in the league?
I'm going to get fired if I keep doing the same thing.
Isn't that insanity?
Yeah.
Hot take.
That's the way it is. You don't want to do this.
They got Muschamped.
Yeah. Then you get fired.
They got Muschamped.
Brian Kelly.
Ooh.
Hot garbage.
Brian Kelly is
National championship bound.
Well, he said I like his attitude, man.
I do too.
I know how salty and ornery he is, but look, he's a good football coach.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. They're not winning at the level that they want to, and I get it. There were some things to clean up after Eddie O, and he hit it right. See, if you got in right before, like when Lane and all those guys got in right before the portal went in, that was the perfect time to get in and get settled.
Right.
You got hired afterwards, and it was 12 months, 24 months in. You're in a little bit more of a scramble mode. Look, man, LSU finished 8th in recruiting. That's not where they want to be, but that's not bad. Three 5-stars, 16 4s, and 2 3s. I mean, that's some good recruiting.
Yeah.
They finished 8th. Auburn finished 6th, and that's like people who I guess want Hugh Freeze to fail, which is fine. I mean, Hugh's Hugh. But the bottom line is that's 2 classes in the top 10 for Hugh. They're going to win.
Yeah.
And it's still going to be high school football driven. I hate to tell y'all. I know we've been skewed in this state because of the Portal King. You're going to find that you're still going to need to be heavy high school guys who stay around. Yeah. You're not going to be able to hit on the portal every year. It's not going to happen, period. End of discussion. It's not going to happen. And if you look at who's in the college football playoff, you can kind of see what supplement.
Right.
Supplement the roster. Absolutely. Or if you're in a rebuild or you have a mass exodus, you're going to have to do some things. But, man.
Brian Kelly's number 8, though?
Yeah, it's not bad. 3 5-stars, 16 4s.
Well, I mean, they had the number 1 flip out of there, too. I mean.
Oh, yeah. See, a 5-star like that is amazing. Sometimes I'm almost like there's too much
emphasis.
That's a good point. I mean, they may have been 5 with him.
Absolutely.
They may have been 5 with him. Absolutely.
Bryce Underwood.
Larry Ellison. And that article in the Wall Street Journal on Michigan flipping Bryce Underwood.
That's cool.
And
Connor.
Yeah. Connor Stallions. Just the whole thing is wild. I wonder if Connor Stallion, he got hosed.
Yeah.
You had a bunch of pearl clutching Big Ten schools and media who went nuts over what he did, which is funny. This is what he did.
Get that guy drunk. I bet he'd fight everybody.
Essentially.
He drove them to a national title. But for our listeners, Connor Stallions is the one that worked under Harbaugh and was into espionage.
Cheated.
I think espionage is cool. Like Netflix series. Wendy found one recently that we started watching. It's a new one. I can't remember the name of it, but the first episode was good. I enjoyed it. Yeah, I did.
It ain't bragging if you can back it up.
The Out of Bounds Show is brought to you by BetMGM, the king of sports books, and Beau Ravage's BetMGM Book Bar and Grill is the South's premier Vegas-style sports book. Visit a live betting window, self-service kiosk, or use the BetMGM app to place your bets on your favorite games and sporting events. Experience the action at BetMGM Book Bar and Grill, only at the Beau Rivage on the beautiful Mississippi Gulf Coast.